Yeah. And we've never lived in a moment that so much information is accessible to us, but yet a lot of that information is suppressed via social media and the algorithms in social media that you are only fed information that appeals to you. So a lot of people get lost in their echo chambers. So that's also one of the things that affects our opinion on reality because it's distorted. So
Yeah, and in fact, again, one of those this is one of those things that started happening fairly early on. Uh, Back in the early 1800s, there was a proliferation of newspapers. This was a new thing, right? In the new nation, the United States, and then there was a proliferation of newspapers, and some of the early the founding fathers actually were hoping that this would help the, the democratic process, because they were hoping that journalists would be, calming the minds of people and taking their time to explain things and help everybody basically reason on things instead of reacting emotionally. Obviously, that did not happen. Immediately, newspapers became partisan and they started, publishing vitriolic attacks on the other side and so on and so forth. And that was a preview of what we see today with social media. Social media is much worse because it's instantaneous and it's not even filtered, right? At least a newspaper, in order to publish an article in a newspaper, you have to go through the editor. That there is some gatekeeping. Basically, it's not like anybody can just publish whatever the hell they want. Um, on social media, on the other hand, anybody who has a computer is an author these days, right? Anybody who has a computer is a journalist or opinionator or an influencer, whatever you want to call it. And that the result of that has been a cacophony of opinions, most of them not well reasoned out, most of them, emotionally charged. And now social psychologists are beginning to realize that this is a problem. This is causing a major issues in society. Social media has had largely a negative impact on our ability to think things through and to reason, as opposed to engage in emotional discourse and possibly violence.
do you think that stoicism could be a solution to this? Because a lot of people do get emotional on their situation and they feel that they don't have any control over their situation. Do you think that stoicism could be the key to figuring out a better way to live their
Yeah.
life and to better their situation?
Yeah, yes, to some extent, Stoicism can be a countervailing force. Whether it's the solution, I think that's a big word. I don't know that there is a solution, but certainly a countervailing, force. Not just Stoicism, but a number of other philosophies. Like again, Buddhism is another one. Buddhism does teach us to be less attached to opinions and to things, and that's also what Stoicism teaches. That take a break, look at things from a distance. Try to uh, pause and don't let your emotions overcome your judgment. So yes, Stoicism teaches us to engage our reasoning ability, to be wary of some of our emotional responses, especially rage, for instance. The one of the major Stoic writers, Seneca the Younger, 2,000 years ago, wrote a book called De Ira, which translates in Latin translates as on rage, where he says it's often translated as on anger, but it really means rage. The kind of he begins the book. He says, look at people that are enraged. Their facial structure, it's completely altered. They look like beasts more than human beings, right? They're really upset. They're really angry, and he warned that that kind of reaction, even when it's justified, people sometimes there's good reasons why people get irate or people get upset and so on. But even when there is a good reason, if you let your anger escalate and you act on the basis of that anger, you're probably going to regret what you're doing, because you're going to be overreacting. You're going to start, punching somebody as opposed to, instead of arguing with somebody, or yelling at somebody as opposed to talking to somebody, and so on and so forth. So Yeah, I do think that practicing Stoicism, just like practicing
Mhm.
Buddhism, is helpful for people because they rediscover the value of reason, the value of letting yourself, giving yourself some space to calm down before engaging. You know, Seneca in on anger gives you very basic advice to manage anger, which is the same kind of advice you get from modern psychologists. He says, look, if you feel yourself getting angry, uh, try to disengage from the situation. Go for a walk. Go out for a walk. You go to the bathroom. Whatever it is that count until 20 or until 100, or take deep breaths. Anything that allows you to take some distance
Mhm.
between your emotional response with your emotional response, so that then you can sort of calm down and say and ask yourself, why was I so upset? What might be a better way of responding to the situation? What exactly is the situation here? We were talking earlier, before we started this conversation,
Yeah.
about the notion that the Stoics have that a lot of things are not under our control.
Mhm.
That we don't control other people's opinions, we don't control what other people say or do, and so on and so forth. What we do control is our reactions to those things,
Mhm.
right? How we think about those things and how we act on those things. Uh, Another one of the major Stoic writers, Epictetus, who lived in the 2nd century, said that some things are up to us and other things are not up to us, and that a good life is the result of focusing on the things that are up to us, because those are the ones where you can actually make a difference, and
Mhm.
then prepare yourself to accept with serenity and equanimity the things that are not up to us, right? So, for instance, let's say I have a job interview, let's say tomorrow morning, right?
Mhm.
It comes natural for us to focus on the outcome of the interview, right? I want the job. Will I get the job, right? And so you start getting anxious about this thing, because naturally you want, your thoughts go straight to the outcome. But unfortunately for you, the outcome is not up to you.
Mhm.
You're not the one that makes the decision to hire or not to hire, right?
Right.
It depends on a lot of other things. It depends on who is making that decision, on what basis, what criteria that person is using. It depends on the competition you might have, and so on and so forth. It depends on your performance, of course, during the interview, and so on and so forth. So, what do you control? What is up
Mhm.
to you? Well, to prepare for the interview in the best way you can. That's up to you. Um, to maybe try to get a good night's sleep before the interview, so that you're refreshed and you go on into the interview in the best possible situation. Try not to get late to the interview, because that's non-professional, and so you will start out on a wrong foot if you actually showed up late. And trying to maintain the focus during the interview. Don't get distracted. Turn off your phone. That sort of stuff. All of those things are up to you. And of course, by paying attention to those things, you do maximize the chances you're going to get the job, right? But of course, there is no guarantee. Again, the outcome is not up to you. So you need, according to Epictetus, you need to be ready from the get-go to say to yourself, look, I may get the job or I may not. And I'm fine either way. Right?
Mhm.
Sometimes in life, things go your way and sometimes they don't. And we're not children. We don't throw a tantrum every time that things don't go our way.
Right.
That's not an adult thing to do. It's not a mature thing to do. If it turns out that you don't get the interview, the job, well, then ask yourself why, what happened. Perhaps you can learn from the experience. Maybe even ask the interviewer for some feedback if they're willing to give it. And then treasure that as experience and move on. And you will apply for other jobs. There will be other jobs down the line.
And I think more now than ever, or now more than ever, people are looking for the key. And that's why Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, among other voices, are so popular because they
Yeah.
praise this stoic way to live. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, people
I'm not
want.
a fan of either one of them. I
I
have to say. So there is a thing that we need to make clear, I guess, because it may
Mhm.
be helpful to your listeners, your viewers.
Yeah.
So there is Stoicism, the philosophy, which is what we're talking about,
Hmm.
the thing that started 2,300 years ago, that's similar to Buddhism, etc., etc. And then there is life hackery. There are people who look at Stoicism not as a philosophy of life, but it's just a set of tools
Hmm.
on how to deal with specific situations, right? And the people you mentioned tend to be on the life hack side of
Mm.
things more than the philosophy side of things. Now, there's nothing wrong with life hacks. We all do it. We all go through life by using certain shortcuts, certain heuristics, certain
Hmm.
ways of dealing with situations, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. If it's helpful, do it. And if it's not helpful, don't do it. However, a philosophy of life is much more than that. It's not about, let's say, well, let me give you the example of perhaps it's easier uh, to grasp the point if I give you an example not from Stoicism, but from Buddhism, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people know that Buddhism comes with certain practices, like different kinds of meditation, right?
Right.
Um, uh, and the different kinds of meditations have different purposes. Some of them have the purpose to clear your mind. Others have the purpose of making you aware of your thoughts. Other ones have the purpose of increasing your care and your loving for other human beings, and so on and so forth. Now, meditation works. There's pretty good evidence that it does, right? The people have done studies on it. Meditation within limits, it doesn't cure cancer, but it does give you, an ability to deal with situations, stressful situations. It deals actually even the ability to deal with pain, with physical pain. So you can use meditation, different kinds of meditations, as a life hack. You can say, look, I have a problem. I'm stressed out. So I'm going to start meditating. And it works.
Hmm.
But just because you meditate in order to reduce your stress, that doesn't make you a Buddhist.
Right.
Okay? You're not a Buddhist. You're simply somebody who meditates, borrows a technique from Buddhism in order to
Hmm.
to address a particular problem, which is, being stressed. What does make you a Buddhist? You are a Buddhist, regardless of whether you meditate or not, by the way,
Hmm.
because a lot of Buddhists don't actually meditate. Um, you are a Buddhist if you agree with the Four Noble Truths, which are the basic fundamental, aspects of the philosophy of Buddhism. If you try to follow the Eightfold Path to Enlightenment, that's what makes you a Buddhist.
Hmm.
Now, let's go back to Stoicism for a second. Therefore, Stoicism also comes with a bunch of techniques, right? For instance, one of them is try to keep a regular philosophical journal. Try to, every night before going to bed, the Stoics advise you to take a few minutes and reflect on what happened to you during the day, and then ask yourself, how did you handle things? Did you handle them well? Did you handle them not so well? If you handled them well, make a note of the things that you did that were good. And if you did not handle them well, then ask yourself, what could I have done differently, right?
Hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
very good technique. That's a very helpful technique. It's used in cognitive behavioral therapy. People learn how to deal better with setbacks and complex situations by using that technique. But just because you keep an evening journal, that doesn't make you a Stoic. What
Right.
does make you a Stoic is if you consider yourself a cosmopolitan. If you really think that, I want to work myself toward acceptance of the notion that every human being on the planet is my brother or sister. You are a Stoic if you practice the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, right? So
Hmm.
if every time you do something, you ask yourself, well, is this a wise thing to do? Is it courageous? Is it just? And is it temperate?
Hmm.
If the answer is yes, then you go ahead and do it. If the answer is no, then you don't do it. That's what makes you a Stoic.